A billionaire stepped into her small-town diner, but when his wallet fell open, what she saw made her heart stop cold. There, tucked behind crisp bills and platinum cards, was a photo. Her mother. A kind, humble black woman who had spent her life working 2 jobs, raising her daughter alone, and never once speaking of fame or fortune. She had no known link to power. No connection to billionaires. So why was her picture in the hands of a man who could buy cities? What followed would shake everything she thought she knew. Stay with us to uncover the truth that rewrote her past. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? The late-night shift dragged on at the near-empty diner. Outside, the flicker of a dying neon sign hummed in rhythm with Maya Brooks's tired steps. She wiped down the counter, eyes heavy, silently counting the minutes until closing. Then, ding, the bell above the door rang. She looked up, expecting the usual, a trucker needing pie or a regular chasing caffeine. But instead, a man walked in, sharply dressed, every inch of him radiating power. His tailored suit alone looked like it could pay off her debt and still leave change. He didn't just enter, he owned the space. His eyes swept the diner like a man who never asked for permission. And then, without a word, he slid into the corner booth by the window, his focus fixed on the city beyond the glass. Maya approached, pen and pad in hand. "No menu," he said quietly. "Black coffee." His voice was smooth, controlled, like a man used to being obeyed. She gave a polite nod and walked off, her curiosity stirring. When she returned with the steaming cup, he didn't look up. Didn't say thank you. But Maya was used to that kind of silence. Indifference wasn't new. She poured it anyway like she always did, gracefully and without expectation. But as he reached for his wallet to settle the bill, something slipped loose. A photograph. It floated to the floor, landing face up like a whisper from the past. Maya's breath caught. Time froze. That smile. Those kind, familiar eyes. Her mother. Her chest tightened. Her heart hammered so loud, it drowned out everything else. For a moment, all she could do was stare, her body frozen in place. Then instinct took over. She bent down quickly, fingers trembling as they closed around the photo. "Where did you get this?" Her voice barely escaped her lips, shaky, raw, full of disbelief. The man's head snapped up, startled. His icy blue eyes locked onto hers, and in that moment, something changed. He saw her, not just the waitress but someone who mattered. Maya held the photo out, gripping it like it was the only truth in the room. "Why do you have a picture of my mother?" His expression shifted just briefly. A flicker of recognition, guilt, something unspoken. Then it vanished, masked by a cold calm. Without a word, he reached forward, his fingers grazing hers as he took the photo. "You must be mistaken," he said smoothly, slipping it back into his wallet like it was nothing. Like it hadn't just cracked her world open. Maya's stomach nodded. She knew exactly what she had seen. That photo, her mother had an identical copy, tucked away in an old memory box back home. She traced every crease, memorized every corner. "This isn't a mistake," she said, her voice firm now. "I'm not confused. Why do you have it?" The man let out a sharp breath, adjusting the sleeve of his expensive suit like her question was an inconvenience. "I don't owe you anything," he replied coolly. And just like that, he stood, placed a crisp $100 bill on the counter and turned for the door. Panic flooded her chest. He was leaving. This could be her only chance to get the truth. She darted from behind the counter, nearly sending a tray crashing to the floor. "Wait." He didn't stop. He was already halfway to a sleek black car idling by the curb. A driver stepped out to open the door. Maya's heart pounded in her throat. "Please," she called out. "Just tell me how you knew her." For a heartbeat he paused, one hand resting on the car door. She held her breath. Maybe, just maybe, he'd turn around and give her something. Anything. He turned slightly, meeting her eyes with a gaze like ice. Then, flat and final, he said, "Forget this." And with that he slid into the car. The door shut. The engine growled. Before Maya could move, the car had vanished into the night, taking her answers with it. Maya stood rooted to the spot, her breath jagged and shallow. A billionaire had just stepped into her quiet world, and walked out again, leaving behind a mystery deeper than she could have imagined. Who was he? And why was her mother's photograph in his wallet? This wasn't something she could walk away from. She would find out the truth. Sleep never came that night. Instead, Maya sat hunched at her cramped kitchen table, lit only by the cold glow of her laptop screen. She had nothing but fragments. No name. No receipt. No business card. Just his face. His voice. And the way he had looked at her, like she was a question he didn't want to answer. But that one photo had changed everything. She started digging, one search after another. Powerful CEOs, real estate moguls, men who controlled cities from boardrooms. Dozens of profiles, headlines, and images scrolled past. None of them matched the face burned into her memory. Her hope thinned. Her eyes ached. Then, just as she was ready to close the laptop, she saw him. Daniel Whitmore, CEO of Lawson Global Enterprises. A billionaire whose name was etched into skyscrapers and whispered in boardrooms. A man who built an empire of glass towers and untouchable wealth. And now he was the key to her past. Maya clicked on the image, her breath catching in her throat. It was him. No doubt. She dove into article after article, scrolling through headlines and press releases. But there was nothing. No mention of her mother. No old ties. No history. Could only mean one thing. He had erased her. Maya's hands curled into fists. That man had sat in her diner with a photograph of Grace Brooks in his wallet, then looked her in the eyes like she was a stranger. Like her mother had never mattered. The realization lit a fire inside her. She wasn't backing down. Not now. She wanted answers, and she knew exactly where to start. At sunrise, Maya boarded the first bus into the heart of the city. Her pulse raced as she stepped off, standing face to face with a towering wall of glass and steel. Lawson Global Enterprises. The skyscraper rose like a monument to untouchable power. But Maya didn't flinch. She took a breath, lifted her chin, and walked straight through the front doors, heading for the reception desk with purpose in every step. "I need to speak with Daniel Whitmore," Maya said, her voice firm, unwavering. The receptionist glanced up, barely interested. "Do you have an appointment?" "No," Maya admitted. "But it's urgent." The woman exhaled with practiced indifference. "Mr. Lawson doesn't meet with walk-ins." Maya expected that. No invitation. No title. No business card. She didn't belong here, and everyone knew it. If she wanted answers, she'd have to earn them another way. Her eyes swept the polished lobby. Security flanked the elevators. Employees buzzed through turnstiles, swiping ID badges like keys to a hidden world. There was no way in. Not the usual way. Then she saw him. A young man, maybe mid-20s, juggling a coffee cup and a folder, weaving toward the elevators with distracted steps. Maya didn't hesitate. She stepped into stride beside him, urgency in her whisper. "Hey. Wait, you forgot to send me that report Mr. Lawson needed." The man blinked, confused. "What?" Maya let out a theatrical sigh. "The report. He's expecting it this morning, remember?" Before he could process it, she moved ahead, gliding through the turnstile just as his badge lit up the sensor. She was in. The guard barely looked her way. She slipped through unnoticed. She was in. Maya's heart pounded as she stepped into the elevator and hit the button for the top floor. This was it. No more running, no more guessing. She was about to come face to face with Daniel Whitmore, and this time she wasn't letting him walk away. The elevator glided upward in silence, the weight of the moment pressing into her chest. When the doors opened, she stepped into a world of glass and power. The top floor of Lawson Global Enterprises was sleek, sharp, a space built to intimidate. Maya's breath caught, her hands clenched tightly at her sides. Before she could take another step, a man in a tailored suit approached, his tone clipped and professional. "Miss, do you have an appointment?" "No," she said, standing her ground. "But I need to see Daniel Whitmore. It's about my mother." His jaw tightened. "I'm sorry. Mr. Lawson doesn't meet with unscheduled visitors." Maya exhaled, steadying herself. "Tell him my mother's name was Grace Brooks." She paused, meeting the man's eyes. "And I'm not leaving until I speak to him." He studied her for a moment, then turned and walked briskly down the hallway. She stood there, pulse racing as the seconds stretched into eternity. At last, a door opened. Daniel Whitmore stepped into the hallway. The moment his eyes landed on Maya, something shifted behind them. Not shock, not anger, but something quieter. Resignation. He walked toward her, each step deliberate, heavy with the weight of the moment. When he finally stood in front of her, he paused. Then, with a voice low and steady, he said, "Come with me." Maya followed him into his office, her heart hammering against her ribs. The door closed softly behind them. She turned to face him, the question spilling out before she could stop it. "Why do you have a photo of my mother?" He said nothing. Not at first. Instead, he moved to his desk, pulled open a drawer, and laid his wallet gently on the surface. He took out the photograph and placed it between them. Maya stared down at it, her mother's smile frozen in time. Then she looked up, her voice barely a whisper. You knew her. Daniel's gaze held hers. His face unreadable. I didn't just know her, he said quietly. I loved her. Maya's breath caught. The ground seemed to shift beneath her. She had come chasing answers. But nothing could have prepared her for this. Daniel leaned against the edge of his desk, shoulders heavy, a deep breath escaping his lips. I loved her, he said again, his voice carrying the weight of wounds that had never healed. But I left. Maya's chest tightened. Why? His jaw tensed. Because I was a coward, he admitted. My family made it clear, if I stayed with Grace I'd lose everything. The inheritance. The company. My place in the only world I'd ever known. Maya's stomach turned. So you chose money over her? His eyes darkened, a storm of guilt flashing beneath the surface. I told myself I'd come back, once I secured it all. Once I was strong enough to fight for her. But by the time I did, she was gone. Maya's fists clenched at her sides. Her mother had struggled, sacrificed, raised her alone, while this man lived behind polished glass in boardrooms. She never said a word about you, she whispered. Not once. Pain flickered across Daniel's face. She wouldn't, he said quietly. She was trying to protect you, from the mistake I made. Maya's breath came shallow, her thoughts spinning. The man who had shattered her mother's heart now stood before her, full of regret but far too late. A flicker of pain passed through Daniel's eyes. She wanted to protect you, he said softly. From me. His words sank into the room like a stone in still water, heavy, irreversible. Maya stood still, struggling to breathe beneath the weight of it all. Her chest ached, her thoughts spun. She needed air. She needed space. Without saying another word, she turned and walked out of his office, the silence trailing behind her like a shadow. That night, back in her apartment, Maya dug through the chest of drawers where her mother kept old memories. She was searching, desperate to find what Grace never told her. She sifted through letters, brittle with time, through faded photos and worn keepsakes. Then her fingers brushed something soft. A velvet pouch, small and hidden deep within the corner of a wooden box. Her breath caught as she carefully pulled it free and opened it. Inside was a silver necklace, delicate and worn smooth with age. Etched into the pendant were 3 simple words. Forgive. Love. Begin. She turned it over. On the back, a tiny photograph, faded but unmistakable. Her father. Beside it, folded neatly, was a note in her mother's handwriting. This belonged to your father. I kept it for you. Maya's hands trembled. The truth she had chased had been with her all along, waiting. One day you will understand. Maya's hands trembled as the words echoed in her mind. It all made sense now. Daniel Whitmore wasn't just some stranger from her mother's past. He was her father. The next morning, she stood outside the towering glass facade of Lawson Global Enterprises, the pendant clutched tightly in her fist. The city roared around her, but she heard none of it. Only one thought consumed her. This man is my father. With a steadying breath, she stepped inside. This time, she wasn't sneaking through side doors or slipping past security. She walked straight up to the front desk, her voice clear, unwavering. I need to see Daniel Whitmore. It's urgent. The receptionist barely looked up. As I said before, Mr. Lawson doesn't. Maya cut her off. She slammed the pendant down on the counter. Then tell him his daughter is here. For the first time, the woman's polished expression cracked. She hesitated, then reached for the phone. Within moments, security guards appeared at Maya's sides. But before they could move, a voice rang out across the lobby. Let her in. Daniel stood at the far end of the hallway, his expression unreadable. Without another word, he turned and walked toward his office. Maya followed, her heart pounding so hard she could barely hear her own footsteps. Inside, the door closed behind them. And the silence between them felt as heavy as the truth hanging in the air. Maya didn't hesitate. She walked straight to his desk, placed the pendant down with care, and crossed her arms. Explain this. Daniel's eyes dropped to the necklace. His hand hovered just above it, fingers twitching. But he couldn't bring himself to touch it. His jaw clenched, and for the first time the mask of control slipped. She kept it, he whispered, almost like he was speaking to the ghost of a memory. She didn't just keep it, Maya snapped. She left it for me with a note. She never told me who my father was. But this, she motioned to the pendant, this said everything she couldn't. Daniel let out a sharp breath and rubbed his temples, pain carving lines into his face. I didn't know, he said quietly. If I had known she was pregnant. If I knew about you. His voice faltered, the weight of those words dragging him down. Maya's chest tightened, but she wouldn't let the ache dull her edge. You didn't know because you left. Daniel's voice cracked with regret. I looked for her, he said, almost pleading. When I finally understood what I'd lost, she was already gone. I hired investigators, but she vanished. No trail. She didn't want to be found. Maya swallowed hard, her throat tight. It sounded exactly like her mother, fiercely protective, always shielding her from pain. But was it protection? Or had it taken something from her she had the right to know? She thought she was protecting me from you, Maya said slowly. Each word a fragile truth. She was still trying to believe herself. She didn't think you deserved to be part of my life. The words left Maya's mouth like a blade, sharp and steady. Daniel flinched, and for a second all the power and polish fell away. Maybe she was right, he murmured. The silence that followed was thick, heavy with everything neither of them had said. And in that stillness Maya saw it. The regret etched deep in his face. The sorrow he no longer bothered to hide. The weight of a life filled with what-ifs. I can't change what I did, Daniel said softly. But I'm here now, if you'll let me be. Maya's fingers closed around the pendant. Forgive. Well, begin. 3 simple words that felt impossibly heavy in that moment. I don't know if I can forgive you, she said honestly, her voice barely steady. Not yet. Daniel nodded, his expression somber, no argument in his eyes. I understand. She took a slow, shaky breath. Her heart was a storm of questions and tangled emotions. But one thing she knew for sure. She wasn't walking away. Not yet. For the first time she was willing to listen. To see what came next. Neither of them spoke. The air between them was delicate. Like a single thread stretched tight. One wrong word and it could snap. At last, Maya reached for the necklace resting on the desk and fastened it around her neck. Her mother had left it for a reason. Not just as a memory of the past, but maybe as a door to the future. Maybe it wasn't only about Daniel. Maybe it was about Maya. About giving her the power to choose. Something Grace never had. Daniel's gaze drifted to the pendant, and for a moment his breath caught. She never stopped thinking about me, did she? Maya's voice was tight with emotion. No. She never stopped protecting me. He nodded slowly, the understanding etched deep into his face. I won't ask for your forgiveness today. Or tomorrow. His voice was calm but full of quiet hope. But if there ever comes a time you want to know me, not as Daniel Whitmore, the businessman, but as the man who made a terrible mistake and wants to make it right, I'll be here. Maya studied him closely, her eyes searching. For pride, for lies, for any trace of the man she feared he might be. But there was none of that. Only regret. Only a man who had carried the burden of a single decision across decades of silence. She took a small step back, her fingers instinctively brushing the pendant at her chest. I don't know what happens next, she confessed quietly. A faint, bittersweet smile tugged at Daniel's lips. Neither do I, he said. But maybe that's all right. Maya gave a small nod, the kind that carried more emotion than words ever could. And then, with one last glance, she turned toward the door. She didn't run. She didn't storm out. She left with purpose. On her terms. She wasn't ready to call him Dad. Not yet. But she wasn't shutting the door either. Maybe the past couldn't be erased. But maybe it could be reimagined, together. Each step she took felt heavier than the last. As if she were carrying not just her own story, but the weight of everything they had both lost. She paused just for a heartbeat. But she didn't look back. Not out of anger, but because she knew. Some wounds take time. And healing doesn't come all at once. She walked away not to bury the past, but to decide if she was ready to reshape the future. She couldn't call him her father. Not yet. But she wasn't locking the door either. Maybe some stories weren't meant to be erased. But maybe, just maybe, they could be rewritten, together. Maya's story is a reminder. The past may leave scars, but it doesn't have to write the ending. Because healing isn't always about letting go. Sometimes it's about learning how to hold on differently. In the end, it's about choosing the path forward. What do you think Maya should do? Should she open her heart and give Daniel a chance to become the father she never knew? Or would it be wiser to keep her distance and protect the life she's built without him? Can love and remorse truly mend what time has fractured? Or are some scars simply too deep to heal? We want to hear from you. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think is the right ending to Maya's story? If this story touched you, be sure to like, subscribe, and tap the notification bell, so you never miss another powerful, unforgettable tale. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.